I'd say within a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I certainly remember once I got out of the ICU and I was up on.
There's obviously a plan for you to make it, though. Your time wasn't up.
Nope.
It's a real, in a lot of ways, it's like the miraculous part of the world where all your guys are in the right place at the right time to save your life. And, I can't even imagine thinking about the people closest to me and having to weigh that and the idea of, like, I might not be here for them. And I mean, all these years later, I understand why that affects you
Yeah.
a ton.
Yeah. It's like I mean, I don't. It's not something you like to think about. But at the same time, I don't. If someone talks to me about it, I share. But to me, 17 years later, it still has the same emotion. I mean, it's a real emotional scar.
Do you remember the first moment you were reunited with your family? Or were you still kind of out?
Yeah, I was. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't like this clear, coherent moment. I can kind of recall the fog of seeing my wife, but my vision wasn't good, and like apparently I couldn't even remember my daughter. My daughter got upset because I couldn't. I didn't know who she was. So, and my wife, she's a better storyteller this part, but I was just all over the place. I mean, like they'd ask me. She said like they'd come in and ask you where I was, and I'd be like, I'm in Bosnia. And, the next day I'm here, and so they really didn't know how bad the damage was.
Right.
Whether I was gonna make it back. So even when I was conscious, I wasn't all there.
Yeah. I imagine you had to sustain like the world's worst concussion of all time too, right?
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
you got thrown out of that thing. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
So
it's a TBI,
yeah, so they're still evaluating that at this point. They can't know the full extent.
right?
That's scary. So do you remember though when you officially kind of woke up and at least were aware of your surroundings? Was that weeks later, a month later?
It was probably, let's say within a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I certainly remember once I got out of the ICU and I was up on, and I was up in a regular ward. That is where everything kind of sunk in. So I'd say that was probably late late May. So it's probably been a few weeks since from when I was initially wounded.
So on the one hand, I would imagine, I think a lot of our worst nightmare is the idea of like being a vegetable or something or not
Yeah.
being able to think, right? So on the one hand, you're like, okay, I'm back with it, like I can understand what's going on, but on the other hand, you're also looking down and you don't have legs anymore. Right?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah, what's that like? So I guess you cognitively know it, but for weeks, or I don't know for how long. I mean, I didn't, but I remember kind of waking up, going every day, like I would just hesitate to open my eyes and just wondered, like, is this a bad dream? Is this a nightmare? And am I gonna wake up and my leg's gonna be there? Is this just a bad dream I can't get out of? And eventually, you start to accept that, you start to process it, you start to, I say embrace it, the reality of it, and so you can start to move forward.
Yeah. Now, are you still like in intense pain, or are they morphining you up still at this point?
Oh no, I'm still on some painkillers. I'm on like Dilaudid.
Okay.
So I mean, I at some point I had fentanyl in me. I mean, I'm on fentanyl and then Dilaudid and then morphine,
Whoa.
all that shit. So it's kind of a sidebar story, but I'm telling you, I was so like, at least a year after this, I could fucking drink a bottle of whiskey or wine, not even be broke. I mean,
Your body was like, keep it coming, man. This is nothing.
nah, yeah. I mean,
They had you loaded up, basically.
Yeah.
So when does, when you were telling me before, it was like 15 months of full rehab after this,
well,
right?
it's so so I'm just like rehab and surgery. So 4 months after I got wounded, I link up with the Giants. In
Oh, that
September.
was then?
4
It
months.
was only 4 months.
September. I got wounded in May. September, the first time I meet the Giants.
Yeah, can you explain the background of this to people? Because you have a couple Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, a classmate of mine, you saw him in the video, Mike Sullivan, who was a coach for the Giants, he was a wide receivers coach, had come to visit me in the hospital. It was that summer. So it was. I think it was June or July. He'd come to visit me, maybe in the hospital. Spent the day down. Came down, drove down, and spent the day with me, and then left.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.